Hello everyone, welcome back again to the Education Diary, day number one of the webinar R programming language. So hello, my name is Gurpreet and I'm the instructor at the Education Diary for the multiple tasks that can be cybersecurity, big data, of course the programming languages like the R. So today we are going to be having a very basic introduction about the R programming language. Now this programming language is majorly being used nowadays because of the trending, we can say, course that is big data or the data analytics, right? So if you are actually in the field of the computer science and you are in the field of the big data, you want to understand how the data actually works, so you can actually go with the R programming language. Now of course I do know that Python, C language or JavaScript, that's a really great thing, but if you know about the R programming language, it's much more better nowadays because not many people know our programming language. And of course it's majorly going to be used in the data visualization as well as in data analytics. So here is basically a very basic introduction about the R programming language. So here you can see it's a programming language for statistical computing and data visualization. It has been adopted in the fields of the data mining, bioinformatics and data analytics, right? So overall, if you're going to be working on the R programming language, it's going to be much more better than using Python in some cases. For an example, if you're going to be having some data that can be a CSV file and you want to have a visualization of that CSV file, so it's going to be, you are going to be using some Tableau or going to be using some Excel, but it's not going to be worth it because you have to write a Python code in that, right? So that is something for that the R programming language has been introduced. In R programming language, you are having majorly more options of customizations. You can actually customize a CSV file, a default CSV file based on your own data set. You can have a comparison of these two different data sets on the same time. You can simulate for the future predictive values as well in the R programming language. But in the Python, you're having not a very high power end. That means our programming language gives you a vast majority of options in the future whenever you are going to be working on the data visualizations or the data analytics. All right. So today we are going to be having a very basic introduction. So first of all, this is the R programming language you need to install based on your operating system. Now I'm personally using Mac OS, but based on your operating system, you can actually go to the software and you can go to the R sources and then you can basically install. But by the way, here also you can see that this is only based on the Mac OS operating system, right? So that is something which you need to understand. So first of all, you must have our programming language being installed in your operating system. So vice versa, we install Python, we install C, we install Java. So same, you have to install our language in your own system. So I do have installed this kind of package, right? So I have installed already based on my Mac. You need to understand that I'm using Apple Silicon, so based on M1 chip I have installed this. If you're using the Intel operating system, Intel chip operating system, so you have to install this one, right? So once actually you install the R programming language, you have to go and download the second thing, which is going to be the R Studio. Now once you are going to be searching R Studio download, so you are going to be having this kind of interface. You have to install R. You can basically go again from here, you will be getting a direct link of here, right? So you can install the R programming language and then you have to install the R Studio. So personally, I have already been installed R Studio, so it's not going to be very hard for me to reinstall, right? So that is something, the very first thing you have to understand. So once basically I'm going to be having, so I'm going to be searching up R Studio, which personally I do have installed already, and I'm going to simply open this up. So here you can see that this is the first UI interface of the R Studio, in which you are going to be working on your R programming language. So today is basically going to be the first introductory day. We are not going into writing the code. We are going to understand that how basically our programming language is being used in the visualizations, right? So what we can do is here, so this is the first UI interface. If I go here and if I try to make it so what we can do is, this is the environment place where you are going to be having up all of your variables being stored. This is going to be the information center or the information place where you are going to be having the information. So suppose if I click on files, now this is going to be having up my files of my operating system. And if I go to the packages, so as soon, like as usual, we are having in Python, we have to install packages that can be third-party packages or OpenCV. We are having multiple libraries, right? So based in R also, we are having so many different libraries we can install and we can work. We are having the help menu. We are going to be having a viewer menu in which we can basically see the graph, we can see the scatter plots and everything. And at the very last, we are having a presentation menu. All right. This is actually the output result, we can say. Now whatever the code we are going to be running, the result of that is going to be running in this environment. Right now you are also having a terminal in the R programming language. That means this is my Mac terminal, which I can basically here use. So suppose if I just write a very basic command, so you can see that this is going to give me the IP addresses and everything in my terminal. Right, we are going to be having some background jobs which is not required for right now. So this is the overall we can say the first interface you are going to be working on. Now again, very first thing you need to understand is that let's open a file which is going to be on desktop. We can go with the R Studio. Now this is a very basic file on which we are going to work. Right, this is a pre-default R, we can say default R, we can say a file on which we are going to work. Right, so that you can understand that how basically R is working. Now what I can do is basically here you can see that this is going to be our file which I've opened, and it is written in the R programming language. Now again, whatever programming you have to do, you have to do here only in this environment or in this field. You are going to write your R code in this field, right? And once you want to implement that, you can simply click on the run. So your R file is going to be running and the output is going to be coming down, or if your file is going to be having some visualization, so it will be shown here. We are going to come in that in a moment. Now this is a pre-default R file. What we can do is we basically take a mouse pointer into this line which is on the sixth we can say number. So here you can see that it will be loading all the data set which are required to run this file, right? So the command for that is basically is going to be library including the data set. So it's going to be including all the data sets inside our R Studio. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to press Control and enter. So once if I hit enter, so you can basically see that at the very last I got a message, library data sets, it has been installed. That means there is no error when we are using this command. Right now the summarize data is going to be summarizing the data. So here we are having the iris. So if you do remember in the previous some webinars, we are taking iris.csv file for the big data or the data analytics, and in that you are getting the information. So iris.csv is one of a very basic example whenever we are working on the data analytics or something like that, or on the visualization. In Python or in any programming language, we have a very basic thing, that is the hello world, right? So in the same manner, we are using iris.csv file in the multiple things that can be based on the Tableau, that can be based on data analytics, or that can be based on any other form of visualization whenever we are working, right? So here is basically the head of iris. So it is going to show the first 6 lines of the iris data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my mouse pointer here, and if I hit enter, so you can see that you are going to be having the result here, which is going to be the sepal length, sepal width, petal length, petal width, and the species, right? So here you can see it is going to show us the very first 6 we can say data, or the upper head of this kind of data set, right? Apart from that, we are going to be having some summary. Now if I hit enter, so this is going to be giving us the result of the summary, that can be sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and petal width, and the species. So there are overall 3 species: Setosa, versicolor, and virginica, right? So we are going to be having 3 species, and based on these 3 species, we are going to be having their sepal width and length, petal length, and petal width, right? And after that, if I want to have a plot, and if I hit enter for this particular command, which was plot, so it will create a scatter plot matrix for the iris data. So here you can see if I'm going to increase, so that is something going to be your view, right? So here you can see that it is going to show us a scatter plot of the data which we have given, right? Now this is really important because you are going to be working on multiple data sets. You have to visualize them so that you can understand that what is going to be the ultimate output of that, right? Apart from that, here you can see that we are going to be having detach. That means suppose if we loaded our data set, and if we want to detach, that means we want to now unload the data set, we can simply go to this particular line, and it is going to simply detach our data set, right? So that is something which is the very first introductory file, which is already having a data set, and this code is only of 23 or 21 lines, right? So it's not very hard, and it is using the iris data file. So as usual, this is a pre-existing data set which the R programming language is being used. Right now, this is the very first introduction on which we have worked on, which is going to be the visualization of the data set. Now what I can do is I can simply close this one. And now coming to the second thing is going to be the packages. Now here, as you can see, as I told you, that in PyCharm or in Visual Studio Code, we do have multiple options to include packages that can be libraries. So in which we can install the OpenCV, we can install some NumPy, we can install Seaborn, we can install, that multiple things. So there are tons and tons of libraries which can be installed on all those IDEs, but when you are working on R, you are not going to be having a lot of these kind of OpenCVs, because that is basically based on the Pythons, right? But for the R, we are going to be having the libraries which can be used in the statistical informations, mathematical calculations, or visualizations. So that is something the libraries are going to be installed only in the R studio. So that is something which you need to understand. Now coming to our browser here, what the personal which I personally use to install the libraries for the R is going to be CRAN. Now here, if I'm going, now it's known as comprehensive R archive network. So here you can see, if I go to the packages, and it is going to be having some package view, and in the task views, I'm going to be having all of the libraries which are being offered by the RStudio itself, right? So these are some of the third party, we can say, libraries which RStudio do provides us, which are verified and important if you're working on some data visualization or statistical mathematical calculations. So here, as you can see, this is basically for databases, for cluster, for the cluster algorithm, if you do know. All right, so cluster analysis and finite mixture models. This is clinical trials for design, monitoring, and analysis for clinical trial designs, monitoring, and analysis. For the chemotrix and computational physics, agricultural science, Bayesian inference, meta-analysis, missing data. So you're having a lot of libraries, and the functionality of each library is really huge. Once you are going to be working on these libraries, you are going to be understanding that how important these libraries are, right? So this is something how you can basically install the packages. Right now I just told you how to check out the packages, but how to install these packages. So what I can do is I can either go to my RStudio and I can go to the packages, and here I can basically click on these and they are going to be installed. Or the next thing is going to be having up a file which is going to be packages. So if I go to this file, now this is a new file. Let me clean this output result. Now this is a new file, right? And here is something the RStudio provides and gives us an option of using Pacman. Now Pacman is something, we can say, a very great tool, which basically installs all the important libraries on our RStudio, right? So the Pacman itself is a library, but it installs the other important libraries for our RStudio. So what I can do is I can simply make a mouse pointer here and I can hit Control Enter. So you can see updating loaded packages. So I do have already installed, but as usual, if I click on yes, it will be updating all of my, we can say, the libraries which are important, right? So here, as you can see, it will take some time. Of course, it is going to be installing some of the libraries, and after that, once it's installed, so it's fine, right? Now after that, require Pacman. Now this is going to be gives us a confirmation messages. So here you can see that loading required package Pacman. So it gives a confirmation message, and after that, if I hit enter, so library Pacman. Now we are using the library Pacman. Now these are some of the important libraries which Pacman do provides us, which is a Pacman itself, which is going to be dplyr. We are going to be having ggalley, ggplot, ggthemes, ggvis, str. Now all these different libraries have different functionalities. All right, so please make sure that if you want to study more about these different libraries, you can actually Google, but all these different libraries do work on the graphical interfaces and providing the visualizations, as well as working on the mathematical fundamentals, right? So these libraries can be that further, if you want, you can basically study on these. Now I'm going to load all these libraries. So once basically I loaded all these libraries, so I'm going to be getting this message that yes, all the libraries has been loaded. And after that, I'm going to be loading up my data set. So the data set has been loaded. Now what I'm going to do is, now here you can see that if I loaded the data set, I can simply unload the data set if I want. So here, as you can see, if I want to unload only some libraries, so I can mention those libraries here. But if I want to unload all the libraries which I recently loaded for this particular R file, I can basically go and use the command p unload all. And if I hit enter, so it will be unloading all the libraries which recently I loaded into this particular R file. All right, by the way, if you also want to go, you can actually click here. So if I click here, so base64, so you can see now it has included or installed the base64 enc. If I uncheck this, so it will be detaching, or we can say unloading, this particular R file. I hope so till now you are able to understand that how basically we can visualize the data inside R, how we can install the packages in R. Now the coming for the last thing today is going to be visualizing for the plot graphs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the output. I'm going to close up this one, and I'm going to opening a new file, or open a file, so which is going to be plot. Now this file is going to be showing us about the plots or the visualization, right? So once again, I have to load the dataset. I'm going to simply load first of all the dataset, and I'm going to open up the first 6, we can say, the columns of the iris.csv. And here, as you can see, I'm going to be having sepal length, sepal width, petal length, and again the same things, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply ask. Now suppose somehow if you don't know what command you have to use, you can simply write the question mark, and after that the command, so it is going to tell you that what this command is going to be used for. Now this is a very great thing in the RStudio. So here, as you can see, that help on topic plot was found in the following packages, that it's blah blah blah. Now here it's blah blah blah. So you can actually go and you can click on these and you can study further. Now the second line is going to be, it's going to be creating a categorical variable. So it's going to be taking iris file, and inside iris it is going to take the species. So let's hit enter and let's see what is going to be the example. Now here, as you can see, now this is only showing us the species, 3 different species, that is the setosa, versicolor, and virginica, right? So it is showing us 3 graphs, 3 different species from the iris dataset. So that is the command. So if you want to get the dataset of a specific thing from that dataset, so you have to give the name of that column. So that can be species, that can be petal length, or whatever. So it is going to give you a bar graph, right? Now if I want to have only the petal length, so I can basically give this one here, and here you can see I'm going to be having the scatter plot of the petal length. Why I'm getting this kind of scatter plot? A bar graph is basically used for the strings values. That means if we are having something alphabetical things or the names, so it can be represented in a bar graph. But if we are having some numerical values, so it is going to be represented as in a form of scatter plot, right? So here you can see now this one is giving us the petal length, right? Now if I want to go with the petal width, so again if I hit enter, so here, as you can see, we are going to be having some quantitative graph. So right, so it is basically telling us about some multiple things. So the highest is going to be 2.5 and the lowest is going to be around 0.1. Right, now let's go with the next one, which is going to be this one. So again, you are going to be having the scatter plot, and at the very last, if I'm going to have the entire data graph, so it's going to be looking like this. Now again, if you were using Python, you have to write a Python code, then you have to give up the dataset file, and then it will be that resulting and outputting the what we can say the visualized manner. But if you're using the RStudio, so in that you don't need that. You just need the dataset and you just need some commands, and it is going to give you the visualization manner. So it's not even a full command, you are not including any libraries, right? Now the next thing is, again, if I'm going to be running up these different kind of sections, so you can see that these are some of the data visualizations you can again study. If I'm going to study for the cos values of this data set, so you can see you are going to be having the cos output of that. If I want to study about the exponential values, so this is going to be the exponential. If I want to understand for about the norm, that is the normalization, so here is the norm graph, right? So this is the normal distribution graph. So once at the very last, if my data set is completed, I studied about the visualized manner, so what I can do is I can simply detach once again, and this data set is going to be detached, right? So I hope so you really understand that what basically RStudio is all about. Now here, as you can see, that this data set is not having a very high level of programming languages, right? So you are not taking a high level of programming languages. It's just understanding the basic syntax of about how the R programming language has been written. Now that's why our programming language is really easy to understand, and it's really easy to make. It's not very difficult, right? So if you are planning to start a new language, so I would suggest to go with the R, because it is not having really high level of programming languages, right? Even some students do find Python as a high level programming language because of the syntaxes are really confusing, but this language is only for the data visualization, for the data analytics, so it's not really hard to understand, right? So tomorrow we are going to be meeting for a new lecture on this particular R, and we are going to be moving forward with some advanced lecture. So till then, everyone, take care and bye bye. If you do have any questions, so make sure to send an email to the education diary so that we can help you out. So yep.